I was sitting on the kitchen floor, my hands shaking so hard that I could barely hold my little boy. Tears poured down his tiny cheeks as he clung to me, his small fingers digging into my arm like he was afraid I might vanish. His sobs were loud, painful, and mine were worse. My husband stood in the doorway, his face cold, his voice sharp. "You're pathetic," he hissed. "Both of you. You make my life miserable." Then, without even looking back, he slammed the door so hard the whole house shook. For a moment I thought the walls would fall down. But it wasn't the house that was collapsing. It was me. I could feel my chest tightening, my breathing quick and shallow. My son whimpered, "Mommy, don't cry." But how could I not? The man I once thought would protect us had become the very reason for our pain. I looked into my child's eyes, my heart breaking with the thought, was this his future? To grow up believing this was love? And then, I heard something. From outside. Heavy footsteps coming back toward the house. My heart froze. Before I tell you what happened next, let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah Williams. I'm 38 years old, and I live in a small town in Ohio, USA. If you're watching this, make sure you subscribe, like, and click the notification bell for more upcoming interesting stories. And tell me, what part of the country are you watching from? Now let's go back to where this story began. Because you need to understand how a woman who once believed in fairy tales ended up here, sitting on the kitchen floor with her child, waiting for the next storm. It all started 5 years ago. I was at the community park watching my niece's softball game when I first met Andrew. He was tall, charming, and had that kind of smile that could make you forget the rain. I wasn't even looking for love at the time, but somehow he found a way to make himself impossible to ignore. He helped carry the folding chairs back to my sister's car, joked about how he couldn't hit a softball to save his life, and before the day was over, he had my phone number. First he seemed perfect. Flowers at my office, surprise visits with coffee, long walks under the streetlights, where we'd talk about our dreams. He told me he wanted a big family, a cozy home, and a wife he could adore forever. My heart believed every word. The first small warning came a month into dating. We were at a diner when the waitress accidentally brought him the wrong drink. Instead of just telling her politely, he rolled his eyes and snapped, "Do you even listen?" I laughed nervously, thinking maybe he was just having a bad day. But something in her face stuck with me. The way her smile fell, the way she hurried away. By the time we got married a year later, I thought I'd won the lottery. The wedding was beautiful, a white dress and vows that made my parents cry. But just 2 months into marriage, the cracks began to show. He started criticizing little things. How I folded laundry, how I cooked eggs, how I talked too much when his friends were over. When our son Ethan was born, I thought maybe fatherhood would soften him. And for a short while, it did. He'd rock the baby to sleep, kiss his forehead, even make silly faces. But soon the shouting began. Not every day at first, but often enough that I'd start tensing at the sound of his car pulling into the driveway. The extreme moments were the worst, slamming doors, throwing his keys across the room, sometimes punching the walls so hard that bits of plaster would scatter onto the floor. I'd pick up the pieces quietly, trying not to upset him more. Ethan learned to hide behind me whenever Daddy raised his voice. Then came last Thursday night. Andrew came home late, smelling of beer. He didn't say hello, didn't kiss Ethan, just dropped his jacket on the floor and started accusing me of turning his own son against him. I told him he was scaring us, and that's when he yelled so loud that Ethan burst into tears. My instinct was to grab my boy and shield him, but Andrew saw that as me choosing sides. That's what led to tonight. The kitchen floor, the tears, the slammed door, and now, the sound of those heavy footsteps outside, coming closer. My whole body went cold. I didn't know if he was coming back to apologize, or to make things worse. And then there was a sharp, deafening crash at the front of the house. The sound was so loud that Ethan buried his face into my chest, trembling. My heart felt like it was going to pound right out of my ribcage. For a split second, I thought the front door had come off its hinges. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps outside had stopped, and then I heard it again, bang. This time it was followed by the splintering sound of wood cracking. "Stay here, baby," I whispered to Ethan, even though I knew there was nowhere safe to go in this small house. My legs felt weak as I stood, still clutching him, moving toward the living room. When I peeked around the corner, my blood went cold. The front door had a deep crack running through it, and Andrew was standing outside on the porch, his fists still pressed against it. His eyes were wild, his face flushed with anger. "Open the door, Sarah," he roared. "Don't make me break it down." Ethan whimpered. "Mommy, I'm scared." I wanted to scream, to run, to hide, but all I could do was stand frozen. My mind was racing. If I opened the door, I'd be letting the storm back in. If I didn't know what he would do next. Before I could decide, Andrew gave the door another violent shove. This time the top hinge popped loose. I knew we had seconds before it gave way completely. I turned and ran back to the kitchen, grabbing my phone. My hands shook so badly that I almost dropped it. My thumb hovered over the number I never thought I'd call. 911. "Mommy, is Daddy gonna hurt us?" Ethan's voice was so small it nearly broke me. I swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart. Mommy's here. I won't let anyone hurt you." I was about to dial when I heard a sudden silence. No banging. No shouting. Just silence. Slowly, I stepped toward the living room again. Andrew was gone. The porch was empty. My pulse was still racing when I realized something. His truck was still parked in the driveway. That meant he was still here. The house has a side door that leads to the laundry room. If he'd gone around the house. I spun around and locked the kitchen door, my breath coming in short gasps. Then I heard the sound that made my stomach drop. A rattling doorknob from the other side of the laundry room. I knew exactly what was about to happen. The metallic rattle of the doorknob felt like it was echoing inside my skull. Ethan gripped my shirt tightly. His little body pressed so close to mine I could feel his rapid heartbeat. I backed us up slowly, my eyes locked on that door. "Sarah." Andrew's voice came from the other side, low and dangerous. "You think you can lock me out? This is my house too." My voice trembled. "Please, Andrew, not in front of Ethan." The doorknob rattled again, this time harder. Then came the sound of his shoulder slamming against the door. The frame groaned under the impact. I knew we didn't have long before it gave way. I looked at the back window over the sink. It wasn't big, but it was wide enough for Ethan to fit through. My mind raced. If I could get him out, he could run to the neighbors. But that would mean letting go of him. Another crash shook the door. This one so hard that a picture frame fell off the wall and shattered on the tile. Ethan screamed. That was it. I dropped the phone into my pocket, scooped him up, and rushed to the window. "Baby, listen to me," I whispered frantically. "I'm going to help you climb out, and I want you to run as fast as you can to Mrs. Collins' house, okay?" His eyes were huge and wet. "What about you, Mommy?" "I'll be right behind you." I lied. I unlatched the window and pushed it open, the cold night air rushing in. But just as I lifted Ethan toward it, I heard a loud, splintering crack. I turned just in time to see the laundry room door burst open. Andrew stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on us like a predator spotting prey. "You're not going anywhere," he growled. My hands froze mid-motion. Ethan still halfway toward the window. Then, without warning, Andrew lunged. Time slowed down. I felt every beat of my heart pounding in my ears as Andrew's body hurled forward. My instincts took over. I twisted my body, shielding Ethan, and shoved him the rest of the way out the window. "Run, Ethan," I shouted. "Go." I barely caught a glimpse of his tiny sneakers hitting the grass before Andrew's hand clamped around my arm like a vice. The force spun me around so hard that my shoulder made a sickening pop. "You think you can turn my son against me?" His face was inches from mine, his breath reeking of alcohol. His grip tightened until I thought my bones might snap. "Andrew, stop," I pleaded, tears blurring my vision. "Please, he's just a child." But he wasn't listening. His eyes were wild, unblinking. Then he shoved me backward so hard that I hit the edge of the counter, pain shooting up my spine. My legs buckled, but I refused to fall. I had to keep my balance in case I needed to run. Somewhere outside, I could hear Ethan's cries fading as he ran toward the neighbor's house. A flicker of relief passed through me. At least he was getting away. But that relief was short-lived. Andrew slammed his palm onto the counter beside my head, trapping me between him and the wall. "You think you can make me the villain?" he roared. "You think anyone's going to believe you?" My mind was spinning. I needed to find a way out, but every exit was blocked by his towering frame. I tried to sidestep him, but he caught me by the wrist and yanked me back. The sudden movement knocked over a glass jar, which smashed on the floor. His eyes darted to the shards, then back to me. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might. Suddenly, from outside, came the blaring sound of a car horn, long, loud, and urgent. Andrew froze, his head snapping toward the window. That's when I saw the flash of red and blue lights reflecting against the kitchen wall. For the first time that night, Andrew's grip on me loosened. His head turned toward the window, the pulsing red and blue light flickering across his face. His jaw tightened. "You called them," he said in a low, icy voice. I didn't answer. I could still hear the car horn blaring outside. And then the sound of a door slamming shut. My heart leapt. Ethan must have made it to the neighbors. They must have called for help. Andrew straightened up, his breathing heavy. "You think they're gonna take your side? You think you're some innocent little victim?" His voice dripped with venom, but there was something else in his eyes now. Panic. Then came the knock at the front door. Firm. Repeated. "Police. Open up." I took a step toward the sound, but Andrew moved first. He stormed to the front door, yanked it open, and there stood two officers, one male, one female. Their flashlights swept across the room, landing first on Andrew, then on me. "Sir, we got a call about a domestic disturbance," the male officer said. "We need to ask you both some questions." Andrew's tone changed instantly. His voice softened, his posture relaxed, and he even managed a smile. "Oh, this is just a misunderstanding. My wife gets a little emotional sometimes." The female officer's gaze shifted to me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Andrew's eyes cut to me like a silent threat. I froze. My throat felt tight, like invisible hands were gripping it. The male officer glanced past Andrew and spotted the cracked door frame, the shattered picture frame on the kitchen floor. "Mind if we step inside?" Andrew hesitated, then stepped back. The officers entered, their eyes scanning every corner. The female officer moved closer to me, her voice quieter now. "Is there a safe place for your child right now?" I nodded quickly, my eyes darting toward the window where Ethan had escaped. "He's with the neighbor." She gave me a small, reassuring nod, but before she could ask more, Andrew spoke up again, his voice rising. "This is ridiculous. I didn't hurt anyone. She's overreacting." The male officer stepped between us, but I could see Andrew's fists clenching at his sides. That was when the female officer's radio crackled. And the words that came through made my blood run cold. "There's a report. The child is missing from the neighbor's yard." My knees nearly gave out. "What do you mean he's missing?" I blurted, my voice trembling. The female officer touched her earpiece, listening for more. "Repeat, dispatch." The radio crackled again. "Neighbor reports the child ran into her yard, but before she could bring him inside, she saw a dark vehicle stop near the street. The child is no longer visible." Everything around me went blurry. The walls, the officers, even Andrew's face. They all dissolved into a haze as my mind screamed one thought over and over. Ethan. I didn't think, I just ran. Past the officers, out the front door, barefoot on the cold grass. "Ethan." I screamed into the night, my voice echoing down the street. My heart pounded so violently it hurt. Behind me, I could hear the male officer shouting into his radio, calling for backup. The female officer was close behind me, her flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. Then, from somewhere down the road, came the faint sound of an engine revving. I turned my head in time to see taillights disappearing around the corner. Oh God, no. My legs moved faster than I thought they could. My feet slapped against the pavement as I chased after the lights, screaming my son's name. I didn't get far before the female officer caught up, grabbing my arm. "Ma'am, stop, you could get hurt." "Hurt? My son is out there." I yanked my arm away, my voice breaking. "I can't just stand here." Andrew appeared on the porch, his face pale. For once, there was no anger in his eyes, only shock. "Sarah, what's happening?" He muttered, almost to himself. The male officer turned to him sharply. "Do you know anyone who would want to take your child?" Andrew hesitated. his mouth opening and closing.
No.
I mean, not really. But there was something in his tone, something that didn't sound right. Before I could press him, the female officer's radio crackled again. Possible match, dark blue SUV spotted heading east on Maple Avenue. Units in pursuit. I looked at Andrew, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Andrew, who drives a blue SUV? His silence was my answer. The way Andrew stood there, frozen, avoiding my eyes, told me more than any words could. My stomach knotted. Andrew, I said slowly, my voice shaking. Who drives the blue SUV? He glanced toward the officers, then back at me, like he was calculating whether to lie or not. Finally, he muttered, It could be my cousin Rick. The female officer's head snapped toward him. Could be? Or is? Andrew shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in months. Why would your cousin take our son? I demanded, my voice rising. Andrew's eyes flashed, a shadow of his old anger surfacing. Maybe because you've been talking about leaving me, Sarah? Maybe he thinks he's protecting me. The male officer stepped forward sharply. Sir, if you have information that could help us find this child, you need to tell us everything right now. Andrew ran a hand over his face, pacing. Rick, he owes me money. He's not stable. Last time we talked, he said something about how a man should keep his family together no matter what. I thought he was just drunk. The female officer was already speaking into her radio. Be advised, possible suspect identified as Rick Walters, dark blue SUV, last seen heading east on Maple Avenue. Child abduction in progress. Proceed with caution. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of the porch rail. If he hurts my baby. I couldn't even finish the sentence. The male officer turned to me. We're going to find him. But you need to stay here, in case he tries to bring the child back or contact you. Stay here. I nearly laughed, but it came out sounding more like a sob. I can't just. Before I could finish, the sound of squealing tires echoed from somewhere close. All of us turned at once toward the noise. Headlights appeared at the far end of the street, moving fast. Too fast. And then, I saw it. A dark blue SUV. The SUV's engine roared as it tore down the street, its headlights glaring like two angry eyes. My heart stopped when I thought I saw a small shadow in the back seat. Ethan. Is that him? I shouted, pointing frantically. The male officer's hand went to his holster. Get back now, he barked. The SUV didn't slow. It was coming straight toward our house. The female officer yanked me backward toward the porch, her grip like steel. I stumbled, my knees hitting the steps, but I didn't care. I couldn't take my eyes off that back window. I was sure I saw movement. At the last second, the SUV swerved hard, its tires screeching against the pavement. It didn't stop. It barreled past the house and down the side street. The male officer was already sprinting to his cruiser. Stay here, he yelled over his shoulder. The engine roared to life, red and blue lights exploding into the darkness as he sped off in pursuit. I turned to the female officer, my chest heaving. We can't just wait. What if they lose him? Her voice was calm but firm. We'll get him. I need you to focus, think. Is there anywhere Rick might go? Somewhere he'd feel safe. I shook my head, my mind spinning, trying to reach through the fog of panic. I don't know. Andrew. Andrew was leaning against the porch railing, staring down the street with a strange, tense expression. There's maybe one place. My uncle's old cabin. It's out past the highway near the woods. But it's been empty for years. The officer's eyes sharpened. Does Rick know about it? Andrew hesitated. Yeah. We used to go there when we were kids. The female officer lifted her radio. Possible secondary location. Old family cabin off Route 19. Requesting unit to check. I didn't wait for permission. I stepped off the porch, heading for my own car. I'm not just standing here while my son is out there. The officer called after me, but I didn't stop. My hands were already fumbling with my keys when I heard the sound. Low, muffled, and coming from somewhere nearby. It was a cry. A small, scared cry. Ethan. I whispered, my voice trembling. It was coming from the alley behind the house. The sound cut through the night like a knife. Faint, shaky but unmistakable. My breath caught in my throat. Ethan! I called again, my voice breaking. The female officer's head snapped toward the alley. She drew her flashlight and motioned for me to stay back, but I couldn't. My feet were already moving. The beam of her light swept across the narrow space between the houses, trash bins, a rusted bike frame, a scattering of leaves. And then movement. A small figure was crouched beside a stack of wooden pallets. My heart leapt. Baby! I ran forward, dropping to my knees and pulling him into my arms. His little body shook as he clung to me. Mommy, I was scared. He sobbed into my shoulder. I know, sweetheart. I've got you now. I kissed the top of his head, my own tears spilling freely. Relief washed over me. Until I noticed something. His wrists. They were wrapped loosely in a piece of duct tape. Like someone had tried to bind him but didn't finish. The female officer knelt beside us, her face tense. Ethan, did someone bring you here? He nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. A man. He said Daddy told him to keep me safe. I felt my whole body go cold. My eyes shot to Andrew, who had just stepped into the alley. His face was pale, his mouth opening like he wanted to say something, then snapping shut. The officer's gaze sharpened. Sir, is there something you'd like to explain? Andrew shook his head quickly. I didn't tell him to take Ethan. Rick must've. But before he could finish, tires screeched again. Not from the street this time, but from behind the houses. The beam of headlights swung into the alley, and a vehicle came into view. It was the blue SUV. And this time, Rick was behind the wheel. The SUV roared toward us, its headlights blinding in the narrow alley. I grabbed Ethan and stumbled backward, pressing him behind me as the female officer stepped in front, her hand flying to her holster. Stop the vehicle! She shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. But Rick didn't stop. The tires spun on the gravel, spraying loose stones toward us. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. In that moment I thought he was going to run us down. At the very last second, the SUV skidded sideways, stopping just feet from the officer. The driver's door flew open and Rick stepped out, his hands raised, but his face twisted in defiance. Whoa, whoa, easy, he shouted. I'm not here to hurt anyone. The officer's gun stayed trained on him. On the ground. Now. Rick hesitated, his eyes darting toward Andrew. And in that fleeting second I saw it, something pass between them. Recognition. Guilt. A shared secret. Andrew took a step forward. Rick, what did you do? Rick's jaw clenched. I was trying to help you, man. She was gonna take your kid and disappear. You said. I never said to take him. Andrew's voice cracked, but I couldn't tell if it was from fear or anger. The officer moved quickly, forcing Rick to the ground and cuffing him. The sound of the metal clicking around his wrists was deafening in the still night. Ethan buried his face in my neck, trembling. I rocked him gently, whispering, It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. But inside I knew it wasn't okay. Because as the officer read Rick his rights, his eyes found mine. And in a low, almost taunting voice he said, Ask your husband what he promised me. I froze. My gaze whipped to Andrew. His face was ashen, his lips pressed into a thin line. What did you promise him, Andrew? I demanded. He didn't answer. He just looked away. That's when the male officer's voice came over the radio, sharp, urgent. We've got a problem. Someone just reported a second child missing from 3 streets over. And all of us turned toward Rick, who started to smile. The smile on Rick's face wasn't just smug. It was chilling, like he knew something we didn't. The female officer's grip on his shoulder tightened. What do you know about the other missing child? She demanded. Rick shrugged, almost playful. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. My skin prickled. Ethan clung to me tighter, sensing the tension. You better start talking, the officer warned. Because if you're connected to this. Rick cut her off with a short laugh. Connected? Lady, you don't even know the half of it. You think I'm the only one who's been moving kids around in this town. My stomach turned. What are you saying? I asked, my voice trembling. Rick's eyes shifted toward Andrew again, and that smile widened. Ask your husband where he was last Saturday night. Andrew's head snapped up. Don't start with your garbage, Rick. You're trying to twist things. But Rick kept talking, ignoring him. She doesn't know, does she? About the meeting. What meeting? I asked, my voice rising. Andrew's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, the male officer came jogging back into the alley, his expression grim. We just got word. The other missing child is a 7-year-old girl. Last seen getting into a vehicle matching this one. He jerked his thumb toward Rick's SUV. My breath caught. She's in there? The officer gave a quick nod to the female officer, who moved toward the SUV, gun drawn. She opened the back door, empty. Then the trunk, empty again. Rick chuckled under his breath. Too late. Where is she? The officer barked. Rick leaned his head back, staring at the dark sky. Wouldn't you like to know? I stepped forward despite the officer's warning. You tell them where she is right now. I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. But Rick's smile faded into something darker, more sinister. If you want to find her, you're gonna have to follow the same trail your husband left behind. I turned to Andrew, my heart pounding. What is he talking about? Andrew opened his mouth, but before he could speak, another voice came from the end of the alley. A deep, commanding voice. Step away from him. He's mine. We all turned, and a tall man in a black hooded jacket stepped out of the shadows. The man's presence seemed to suck the air right out of the alley. He moved with slow, deliberate steps, his hood casting a shadow over most of his face, but I could still see his jaw, strong, tense, unshaven. The female officer instantly drew her weapon. Sir, stop right there. He didn't. His boots crunched against the gravel as he closed the distance, his gaze locked on Rick. I told you, he said in that same deep, steady voice. You don't talk to anyone but me. Rick's cocky smile faltered for the first time. You shouldn't be here. The male officer stepped in, blocking the stranger's path. This is an active investigation. Identify yourself. The man slowly raised his hands, but not in surrender. Names don't matter. I'm here for the girl. The words hit me like ice water. My arms instinctively tightened around Ethan. What do you mean, you're here for the girl? Who are you? He tilted his head, finally letting his eyes meet mine. They were an unsettling shade of pale gray. Cold, unreadable. Let's just say, I'm the one who makes sure certain children end up where they're supposed to be. The female officer's voice was sharp. You're under arrest. She took a step forward, but in one swift motion, the man reached into his jacket and pulled something out. No weapon but a small black phone. He held it up so we could all see the screen. It was a live video feed. A little girl, dark hair, tear-streaked cheeks, sitting in the back of a moving van. The female officer's voice wavered. Where is she? The man's lips curled into a small, cold smile. I'll tell you, but only if you let Rick go. The officers exchanged a quick, tense glance. I felt my blood boil. You can't bargain with a child's life. I shouted. His pale eyes shifted back to me. You'd be surprised what people will bargain for, Sarah. Hearing my name from his lips sent a shiver down my spine. How do you know my name? I whispered. That smile deepened, but he didn't answer. Then, without warning, the black phone in his hand began to ring. And his expression changed completely. The shrill tone of the ringtone cut through the tense silence like a blade. The man's pale eyes narrowed as he glanced at the screen. For the first time since he appeared, he looked unsettled. He stepped back a half pace, answering the call without taking his gaze off us. Yeah. A faint voice crackled from the phone's speaker, too muffled for me to make out the words. But whatever it said, it made him stiffen. That wasn't the deal, he growled, his jaw tightening. You told me. The voice cut him off. He listened for a moment, then turned his head slightly, almost like he was making sure no one could read his expression. Rick shifted in his cuffs, watching the man carefully. It's him, isn't it? Rick said. He's pulling the strings now. The man's free hand clenched into a fist. Shut up, Rick. The female officer stepped forward. Put the phone on speaker. We want to hear this. He hesitated, and then did something none of us expected. He tossed the phone onto the gravel in front of us. Go ahead. Listen. The male officer crouched, hitting the speaker button. A distorted, almost mechanical voice filled the alley. You've got 1 hour to bring me both kids, the voice said, slow and deliberate. or the girl disappears forever. And Sarah. My blood froze. You'll never see your son again either. I instinctively pulled Ethan closer, feeling his small hands clutch at my shirt. Who are you? I demanded, my voice shaking. The voice chuckled softly. Just someone finishing what Andrew started. All eyes swung to my husband. Andrew's face went pale as chalk. That's a lie, he said quickly. I don't know who that is. But the voice on the phone spoke again, almost amused. Tell her about Saturday night, Andrew. Tell her where you really were. Andrew's mouth opened, but no words came out. The line went dead. In the heavy silence that followed, the man in the black hood bent down, picked up the phone and slid it back into his pocket. Looks like we've got ourselves a bigger problem, he said, his tone low. And if you want those kids back alive, you're going to have to trust me. The word trust tasted like poison in my mouth. I didn't even trust my own husband at this point. How was I supposed to trust a stranger who walked out of the shadows holding a video of a kidnapped child? The female officer's voice was sharp. You're not going anywhere. You're coming down to the station for questioning. The hooded man gave a slow shake of his head. If you waste time on me, those kids are gone. You heard him, you've got 1 hour. That's not enough for your red tape. The male officer stepped closer. Then start talking. Who's behind this? He hesitated, his pale gray eyes flicking briefly toward Andrew before landing back on the officers. Someone who used to be very close to your suspect here. Someone who thinks Andrew owes him. I felt my stomach twist. What does this have to do with my son? The man's gaze softened for the first time, just slightly. They're not after your son yet. He was just leverage. The girl is what they really want. Why? The female officer pressed. But before he could answer, Rick laughed. Oh, this is rich. You all think this is about some ransom? No. This is about cleaning up loose ends. And Andrew. Shut up. Andrew barked, his voice cracking. Ethan whimpered in my arms, and I bent my head to whisper soothingly, though my own voice was unsteady. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. The hooded man turned to me. If you want to see both kids alive, you're going to need to come with me. Alone. The female officer instantly shook her head. Absolutely not. That's not happening. He ignored her, his gaze fixed on me. They won't talk if the police are there. But you're not a threat to them. Yet. My heart pounded so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. Every instinct told me not to go. But the thought of that little girl, scared and alone, and the threat hanging over Ethan's head. Andrew stepped forward suddenly. If anyone goes, it should be me. I can talk to them. Rick smirked. Oh, I'm sure you can. After all, you've done it before. The male officer moved between them, but it was too late. The words were out there, heavy in the air. And that's when Ethan looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes and whispered, Mommy, I've seen that man before. My heart stopped. Who, sweetheart? Ethan's little finger lifted, pointing straight at the hooded man. For a heartbeat, the entire alley went silent. No one moved, no one breathed. Ethan's trembling finger stayed aimed at the hooded man, his small voice breaking the stillness. He was at our house when Daddy didn't know I was watching. My grip on Ethan tightened. When baby? When was he there? Ethan's brow furrowed, like he was digging deep in his memory. It was dark. You were asleep. I got up to get water, and I saw him in the kitchen with Daddy. They were whispering. The hooded man's jaw tensed, but he didn't speak. I turned sharply to Andrew, my voice rising. Is that true? Andrew shook his head too quickly. No. He's confused. He probably saw someone else. Ethan interrupted. No, Mommy. It was him. He gave Daddy an envelope. That one word, envelope, hit me like a brick to the chest. What was in it, Andrew? Andrew's eyes darted everywhere except mine. It wasn't what you think. It wasn't. Rick chuckled from where he was cuffed. Oh, it's exactly what she thinks. And then some. The female officer's tone was razor sharp. You'd better start explaining, Andrew. Because right now your story's unraveling fast. Andrew's face went pale. His voice dropped so low I could barely hear him. It was money, but I didn't know where it came from. The hooded man finally spoke. You knew enough. His gaze swung back to me. Your husband's been involved with them longer than you realize. That envelope was a payment for information. I felt the ground tilt under me. Information about what? His next words made my blood run cold. About families. With young children. The female officer stepped forward. That's it. Andrew, you're coming with us. But before she could finish, the hooded man's phone buzzed again. This time he looked at the screen and his eyes narrowed. They've moved the girl, he muttered. My voice cracked. Where? He looked up, locking eyes with me. They just sent me coordinates. And it's not far. Then his gaze swept over the officers. But if the police show up first, they'll disappear again. For good. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Every second felt like a choice between safety and losing those kids forever. And then Ethan whispered in my ear, Mommy, I think I know where they took her. I froze mid-step, my fingers tightening protectively around Ethan's small hand. The hooded man kept walking without looking back, but his shoulders stiffened at Andrew's words. What do you mean? I called over my shoulder, my voice trembling. Andrew's face was pale, his eyes wide. You think he's here to save that girl? Sarah, he's the one who takes them. The female officer shot Andrew a hard glare. You'd better have proof for that claim. Ido. Andrew's voice cracked, desperation dripping from every word. That's who he works for, the people you think you're chasing. He finds the kids. He delivers them. The hooded man finally turned, slow and deliberate, his pale gray eyes unreadable. You really going to listen to him, Sarah? The man who sold his own family out for cash. Andrew shouted. At least I never put a bullet in anyone's head. The officer stiffened. My stomach dropped. Bullet. I whispered. The hooded man's gaze didn't waver. You think these people just hand over kids without a fight? Sometimes it gets messy. The female officer stepped between us. All right, that's enough. Nobody's going anywhere until we figure out what's true. The hooded man's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened. Without a word, he turned it so we could all see. It was a picture of the little girl. But this time, she wasn't alone. Ethan gasped. That's me. My heart lurched into my throat. In the photo, Ethan was sitting on the floor beside her, his hands tied, eyes wide in fear. But Ethan was standing right here beside me. What, how? My voice failed me. The hooded man's tone was ice. They just sent me a message. If you don't come in the next 20 minutes, they'll take both of them. Andrew's face turned the color of ash. Sarah, you can't go. You'll never come back. But it was already too late, because Ethan tugged my sleeve, his voice small and scared. Mommy. I remember that picture. They took it a long time ago. My breath caught. What do you mean, sweetheart? How could they have taken that picture a long time ago? Ethan's little brow furrowed, like he was pulling a memory from deep inside. It was when Daddy took me to that scary house. The girl was there. She had a pink ribbon in her hair. They made us sit together and smile. But she didn't smile. Then they told me I could go home. The hooded man tilted his head slightly, watching Ethan with unreadable eyes. That would mean they've had her for a while. The female officer's voice was sharp. Why didn't you tell anyone about this before, Ethan? Ethan glanced nervously at Andrew. Because Daddy said if I told you, bad men would hurt Mommy. Andrew's face flushed red. I told him that to protect him. You don't know what they're capable of. Rick's voice oozed through the tension. Oh, we know. And your boy just blew the lid off your little secret. The male officer stepped forward. Andrew, did you know the girl was being held all this time? Andrew's hands went up defensively. I didn't know. I suspected. But every time I got close to asking questions, I was warned to back off. The hooded man gave a humorless laugh. Warned, huh? You mean paid? Andrew's glare could have burned through steel, says the guy who probably put her there in the first place. The air between them crackled with something dangerous. My instincts screamed at me that I was standing between two predators, and neither was telling me the full truth. The hooded man stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Whether you believe me or not, the girl's still in danger. And now, thanks to this new photo, they know Ethan remembers. I felt my chest tighten. What are you saying? His gaze locked on mine, unblinking. They'll come for him next. Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed from somewhere nearby, followed by the screech of tires. The female officer grabbed her radio. All units, possible suspect vehicle moving east. But then Ethan whispered, "Mommy, I think they're already here." I turned and saw it. A black van creeping toward the alley entrance, its headlights off, windows tinted black. The van rolled closer, silent except for the faint hum of its engine. Every instinct in me screamed run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The tinted windows gave nothing away, just our distorted reflections staring back. The female officer's hand went to her holster. "Stay behind me," she barked. The hooded man didn't move to hide. Instead, he stepped into the center of the alley like he was inviting the van closer. "What are you doing?" I hissed. He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the driver's side, his hand slipping into his jacket. The van stopped just a few feet away. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the side door slid open with a metallic scrape. Two men in dark clothing jumped out, masks covering their faces, their movements quick and precise. One held a length of rope, the other, a syringe. Ethan whimpered and clung to me. My pulse roared in my ears. The male officer shouted, "Drop your weapons." They didn't. In a blur, the masked man with the rope lunged straight for Ethan. I yanked him back just in time, my shoulders slamming into the brick wall. The female officer fired a warning shot into the air, but the other man with the syringe darted toward her, forcing her to dodge. The hooded man moved then, fast, almost too fast to follow. He tackled the rope-wielding attacker to the ground, twisting his arm until the rope clattered away. But before I could even breathe, the second masked man shoved the syringe toward Ethan again. Andrew did something I never expected. He threw himself between Ethan and the needle. The syringe jabbed into Andrew's arm instead. He gasped, his knees buckling. "Go run," he croaked. I grabbed Ethan and stumbled backward, my eyes locked on Andrew as his vision went glassy. The hooded man ripped the syringe out and flung it aside, but his face was unreadable. That dose wasn't meant for him. My throat tightened. What was it meant for? His answer was like ice. To make Ethan forget everything he's seen. Behind us, the van's engine roared back to life. The van's tires screeched against the pavement, smoke curling into the air as it reversed down the alley. For one breathless second, I thought the masked men might try to fight again, but instead they leapt inside, slamming the sliding door shut. "Go, go, go!" one of them shouted from inside. The hooded man sprinted toward the retreating vehicle, pulling something metallic from his pocket, a small black device. He aimed it at the van and pressed a button. A high-pitched whine filled the air, so sharp it made my teeth ache. The van jerked, swerved violently to the left, then somehow righted itself and sped away. The hooded man cursed under his breath. EMP failed. They've shielded it. Meanwhile, Andrew was slumped against the wall, his skin pale, sweat running down his temple. The male officer knelt beside him, checking his pulse, his heart rates dropping. I clutched Ethan tighter. "We have to take him to a hospital." The hooded man shook his head. "If you do, they'll finish what they started. That stuff in his system isn't just a sedative. It's laced with something that'll kill him if they track his location to a public facility." The female officer's eyes narrowed. "And how exactly do you know that?" He didn't answer, just turned his gaze back toward me. "You want your husband alive? You help me find where that van's going. Right now." Ethan's small voice trembled. "But Daddy's sick." I looked between Andrew, barely conscious, and the hooded man, who stood there like he'd already decided my choice for me. Andrew's lips moved, his voice barely audible. "Don't trust him." The hooded man stepped forward, impatience flashing across his face. "Sarah, every second you waste means that girl, and maybe your son, will never be seen again." My pulse thundered in my ears. I was about to speak when Ethan tugged at my sleeve again, pointing toward the end of the alley. "Mommy, look." I followed his gaze, and my stomach dropped. There, barely visible in the dim light, was a second black van. Its engine was running, and its side door was already sliding open. The second van idled like a waiting predator. Its headlights still dark, only the low rumble of the engine cutting through the silence. My grip on Ethan tightened until he whimpered. The hooded man's posture shifted. Alert, ready. That's not the same crew. This is a grab team. Before the words even sank in, the door slid fully open. 3 figures emerged, all in black, but unlike the last attackers, these wore heavy tactical vests and face shields. The metallic click of their boots against the pavement sent a shiver down my spine. The female officer raised her weapon instantly. Police. Hands where I can see them. One of the figures tossed something small and cylindrical onto the ground between us. It clinked once, twice, and then exploded into a thick white cloud. Smoke! The male officer shouted, coughing. The world turned into a choking haze. I could barely see the hooded man's outline as he lunged forward, tackling one of the figures to the ground. A muffled grunt followed, then the sound of fists connecting with flesh. Through the smoke, a gloved hand grabbed my arm, yanking me backward. I twisted, clutching Ethan, and screamed. A voice, low, steady, and horribly calm, spoke right into my ear. You're coming with us. Both of you. I kicked, fought, clawed at the mask covering their face, but the grip was iron. The smell of chemicals clung to their gloves. The female officer's voice cut through the chaos. Sarah, get down. A shot rang out. My captor jerked and loosened their hold. I stumbled free, pulling Ethan with me, my lungs burning from the smoke. Through the swirling haze, I spotted the hooded man wrestling with another attacker. Until that attacker pulled a knife. The blade flashed, catching the dim light, and then the hooded man staggered, clutching his side. Mommy! Ethan cried. I grabbed him tighter, the smoke thinning just enough to see the third figure still standing by the van, holding something in their hand. Not a weapon. A phone. They raised it, snapped a picture of us, and then disappeared back inside the van. The engine roared to life. The van shot forward, tires squealing, and vanished around the corner before any of us could react. The smoke still hung heavy in the air, making my eyes sting and my throat burn. The female officer ran toward the street, shouting into her radio. Suspect vehicle heading west, second team, cut them off. The hooded man leaned against the brick wall, one hand pressed to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. They didn't come to take you, not tonight. That photo was the real hit. I frowned, still coughing. A photo? Why? He winced, his breath shallow. It's confirmation. Proof you're alive. And with me. That means the clock's ticking. The male officer looked between us, frustration etched on his face. Can someone speak English here? Who are they? The hooded man's eyes met mine, and I felt a chill run through me. They're the ones who own Andrew's debt. And now they know where you are. I glanced back at Andrew, slumped on the ground, barely conscious from whatever was in that syringe. Then we need to leave. Now. The hooded man nodded, but his gaze shifted toward Ethan. You need to understand, after that photo they'll skip the games. Next time, they'll come straight for him. Ethan's hand tightened around mine, and for the first time, I saw real terror in his eyes. Not the fear of the alley or the smoke, but the kind that burrows deep and doesn't leave. The female officer jogged back toward us, her face grim. We lost them. No traffic cams on that street. Van's gone. The hooded man's jaw tightened. Not gone. Just ahead of us. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. So, what's the plan? His answer was short. We make them come to us. On our terms. The male officer scoffed. That's a suicide move. The hooded man's eyes didn't waver. Only if you do it wrong. Before I could process that, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and froze. It was a message. No name, no number, just a picture. The same photo they had just taken. But with one difference. A countdown timer had been digitally overlaid in the corner. Midnight. The glowing numbers on my screen ticked down. 23:59:57. 23:59:56. Each second falling away like the beat of a war drum. My hands felt cold, even though my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The hooded man stepped closer, his eyes narrowing at the screen. They've given you a day. The male officer frowned. A day for what? The hooded man's reply was flat, certain. To hand over Ethan. Ethan pressed against my side, his small voice shaking. Mommy, I don't want to go anywhere. You're not going anywhere, I whispered, pulling him close. My voice was steadier than I felt. I promise. The female officer's gaze shifted between me and the hooded man. If what he's saying is true, they're forcing you to make a choice. Give them the boy or... She didn't finish the sentence, but we all knew. I shook my head. There's no choice. They can't have him. The hooded man's voice dropped to a low growl. Then you have less than 24 hours to make yourself impossible to find. Andrew groaned from the ground, his words slurred. They'll never stop. I crouched beside him, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. Then we'll make them regret ever starting. The hooded man pulled something from inside his jacket. A small folded map, its edges frayed. There's one place they can't reach you. But getting there won't be easy. Roads will be watched, your phone's already tagged, and, he glanced at Ethan. They'll expect you to run. The female officer stepped forward. Then what's the plan? His answer came like a hammer strike. We don't run. We hunt them first. The male officer swore under his breath. You're insane. You're talking about going after an organized network with a mother and child in tow. I'm talking about making sure they never get the chance to grab him. The hooded man shot back. The female officer looked at me. It's your call. The weight of every eye in that alley pressed on me. I looked down at Ethan, who clung to my shirt, then at Andrew, barely able to keep his eyes open. I opened my mouth to speak, and my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a picture. It was a live video feed, and in it was my mother, bound to a chair, a black-gloved hand holding a knife to her throat. My breath caught in my throat. Mom! The word escaped before I even realized I'd said it. On the tiny phone screen, my mother's eyes darted left and right, panicked, searching for something. Maybe for me, maybe for hope. Her hair was messy, her cheek bruised, her hands bound behind her. The camera jerked as if someone had moved closer. A gloved hand appeared, gripping a knife, pressing it lightly to her throat. The blade glinted in the dim light. A distorted, robotic voice spoke from the feed. 24 hours. Or the clock ends for her first. Then the video cut to black. I stood frozen, staring at the screen. My legs felt heavy, like they were no longer mine. The hooded man swore under his breath. They're moving faster than I thought. Ethan's voice trembled. Grandma's hurt. I knelt in front of him, forcing my voice to sound calm even though my insides were twisting. She's scared, honey, but we're going to help her. The female officer reached for my phone. We can trace the feed, if we move fast. The hooded man shook his head. They'll have used a relay. By the time you hit the source, they'll be long gone. The male officer glared. So what, we just do nothing? No, the hooded man said, his tone sharp. We make them believe they've already won. That's the only way to find where they're holding her. I looked between them. And if we do that? His eyes met mine. Then we walk straight into their nest and burn it down from the inside. Andrew coughed, trying to sit up. It's a trap. His voice was weak, but the warning in it was strong. The hooded man gave a bitter smile. Of course it's a trap, but we don't have a choice anymore. My heart pounded. So what's the first step? He pulled a small, battered flip phone from his pocket and tossed it to me. We make the call they're waiting for. I stared at the old phone in my hand, my reflection faint in its tiny screen. I could already feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. If I called them, I'd be playing their game. If I didn't, my mother might not survive the night. The female officer leaned closer. Sarah, you don't have to do this. I looked at Ethan, then at the phone, and slowly flipped it open. Before I could press a single button, the phone lit up. They were calling me first. I pressed the green button, my hand trembling so much I almost dropped the phone. Hello. My voice cracked. A low chuckle slid through the line, distorted and hollow. You sound frightened. I swallowed hard. Where's my mother? The voice ignored the question. 24 hours. One boy. In exchange, the old woman goes free. Ethan's fingers clutched my sleeve. I turned away slightly, shielding him from the venom dripping through the speaker. You think I'm handing over my child to Sarah? The the voice interrupted, smooth but sharp. You already know what happens if you don't. The sound shifted, muffled shuffling, then a whimper. My mother's voice came through, weak and strained. Don't do it, honey, run. A harsh crack followed, like the butt of a weapon striking bone. She cried out, and my entire body tensed. You have the address, the voice continued coldly. Midnight. Alone. Bring the boy. I don't have. The call ended with a click. The hooded man stepped forward. They're pulling you into their kill zone. That's what the address means. I stared down at the phone in my hand, my thoughts colliding too fast to hold on to. Midnight. Alone. Bring Ethan. It wasn't a negotiation. It was an order. The female officer moved closer. We can set up a sting, surround the area. The hooded man shook his head. They'll spot you a mile away. She won't live to see us get close. Andrew, still leaning weakly against the wall, muttered, They don't keep promises. Even if she goes, they'll. His voice trailed off. I realized then that every option meant danger. But one thing was clear, waiting for them to make the next move was suicide. The hooded man's voice cut into my thoughts. We need to see the address. Now. I took the crumpled slip of paper from my pocket. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The writing was messy, scrawled in black marker. Ashford Warehouse, Dock 7. The hooded man's jaw tightened. Figures. That place is a ghost site. No active business, no cameras, no reason for anyone to notice what happens there. Ethan looked up at me. Mommy, are we going there? I didn't answer him. Not yet. Because at that moment, the female officer's radio crackled to life. Dispatch to Unit 4, we've got movement at Ashford Warehouse. Multiple heat signatures. Possible hostages. The female officer's hand hovered over her radio. If they're already at the warehouse, we might have a chance to get your mother out before the trade. The hooded man shook his head immediately. If we go now, we walk into a hornet's nest at its busiest. They'll have the place locked down for preparation. At midnight their guard drops. They think they'll be in control. I clenched my fists. So you're saying we just wait? While my mom is in there? He looked me dead in the eye. I'm saying if we act too soon, she doesn't make it out at all. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. I don't want Grandma to get hurt. The male officer swore under his breath. There's another option, send in a recon team. Get eyes on the layout without making contact. The hooded man hesitated, then gave a short nod. Fine. But if they spot you, you'll bring the whole place down on her head. The female officer turned to her partner. We can use the east side drainage canal. Thermal drones can peek through the loading bay gaps. Andrew stirred. His voice faint but urgent. It's worse than you think. Ashford's not just a meeting point. It's where they hold. The ones they don't plan to trade back. The silence after his words was heavy, suffocating. I felt my stomach twist. You mean? He nodded weakly. They've got more than your mom in there. A lot more. The hooded man's expression hardened. That means we're not just walking into a hostage rescue. We're stepping into a prison built for ghosts. The female officer was already moving toward the patrol car. We don't have time to argue. If we're doing recon, we need to move now. I crouched beside Ethan. You're staying here with Andrew until I get back. His eyes widened in fear. No. I'm not letting you go alone. Before I could argue, the hooded man's gaze snapped toward the alley mouth. His body went still, his hand sliding toward the pistol under his coat. What is it? I whispered. He didn't answer. He just raised one finger to his lips. A slow, deliberate sound echoed in the distance. Top, top, top. Footsteps. Measured. Closing in. The female officer froze, her hand hovering over her weapon. And then a shadow stretched across the mouth of the alley. Whoever it was wasn't alone. The first man stepped into view, tall and broad, his face hidden under a black scarf. Two more followed, each holding something in their hands. Not guns, but heavy metal pipes that glinted in the dim light. The hooded man's hand hovered near his weapon, but he didn't draw. Not yet. His eyes flicked between them, calculating. The leader stopped just inside the alley, his voice low but carrying. Sarah Mitchell. Hearing my full name in that cold, certain tone sent a shiver through me. Who's asking? I tried to keep my voice steady. He tilted his head slightly. Consider us the reminder. You have less than 24 hours. Your mother's life is ticking away. The female officer stepped forward, badge out. You're trespassing and threatening a civilian. Put the weapons down and... Her words cut off when one of the men tossed something onto the ground between us. It landed with a dull thud. I stared at it. A phone. My mother's phone. The screen was cracked but still glowing faintly, and playing a looping video. In it she was crying softly, whispering my name over and over. Proof of life, the leader said. For now. Ethan moved closer to me, his little hand squeezing mine. The male officer's voice was tight. You've made your point. Leave. The leader smiled faintly under the scarf. Oh, we're leaving. But first. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, holding it between two fingers. The hooded man tensed. Don't touch it. But the leader just tossed it at my feet. New instructions. Midnight is too late. You come in 2 hours. Alone. Bring the boy. My stomach dropped. 2 hours? That's... He stepped closer, just enough for me to see his eyes, cold, unblinking. Tick-tock. Then, as quickly as they came, the 3 men turned and walked out of the alley, disappearing into the night. The female officer bent to pick up the paper, but the hooded man grabbed her wrist. Careful. Could be marked. He slipped on a glove, then unfolded it. His face went pale. It's not just a location. It's a route. They've planned every turn you'll take to get there. No deviations. Andrew coughed from the ground. They're tightening the noose. I looked at Ethan, who was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. My heart raced. We'd lost 22 hours in the blink of an eye, and I had no idea how to save both my mother and my son. The hooded man was already pacing. 2 hours isn't enough for a proper plan. They know that. They want you desperate and sloppy. The female officer unfolded a city map across the hood of the patrol car. If we follow their route exactly, we can position teams in the shadows along the way. The hooded man shook his head. Too risky. They'll be watching every intersection. One wrong shadow, and they'll pull the trigger on her before you get within a mile. I stared at the crumpled paper in his gloved hand. So what do? Just walk in blind. Andrew coughed, then spoke, his voice hoarse but urgent. There's another way. Ashford Warehouse has a maintenance tunnel, old, from before they sealed it off. If you find the entrance, you could bypass their checkpoints. The male officer frowned. And where exactly is this tunnel? Andrew's eyes shifted. Under the south loading bay. But it's guarded. Not by them, by something worse. A chill ran through me. Worse than armed men? He didn't answer right away. Dogs. Trained, starving, and locked down there for days at a time. They'll attack anything that moves. Ethan gripped my hand tighter. Mommy, I'm scared. I knelt in front of him, forcing a smile I didn't feel. It's okay, sweetheart. I'm going to keep you safe. The hooded man's eyes flicked to the map. If Andrew's right, we can hit the tunnel entrance 15 minutes before the meeting time. That gives us a chance to get inside without them realizing. The female officer frowned. And if they figure out she's not coming through the main route? His voice was flat. Then the only thing that matters is moving fast enough that they don't have time to react. The male officer handed me a small earpiece. Stay in contact. If you lose signal, we'll assume you're compromised. My hands trembled as I put it in. Every second felt heavier than the last. The hooded man checked his watch. If we're doing this, we leave now. I nodded, heart pounding. Let's go. We had barely stepped into the street when a black SUV screeched around the corner, tires screaming against the asphalt. Its headlights flooded the alley, and the doors flew open. 5 masked men jumped out. And they weren't aiming for me. They were aiming for Ethan. Everything happened in a blur. The first man's gloved hand reached for Ethan's arm, but I yanked my son back so hard we both stumbled. The hooded man was already moving. His shoulder slammed into the attacker, sending him crashing against the SUV's door. The female officer drew her gun. Drop him. Now. One of the masked men swung a crowbar toward her. forcing her to dive aside. The metal rang out as it hit the pavement, inches from her head. Ethan screamed, and the sound made my blood run hot. "Run, baby." I shoved him toward the male officer, who grabbed him and started backing down the alley. But two attackers broke off, sprinting after them. The hooded man pulled a knife from inside his coat and caught one in the side, twisting hard before shoving him into the second. "Get her out of here," he barked, but I didn't move. I grabbed a broken bottle from the ground and swung at the man coming toward me. The jagged glass tore through his jacket sleeve, and he cursed, stumbling back. The SUV's engine roared. The driver gunned it forward, trying to cut off Ethan's escape. "No!" I screamed, sprinting toward the vehicle. My hand slammed against the hood, but the headlights blinded me. Suddenly, there was a deafening crack, gunfire. The driver's side window shattered, and the SUV swerved violently, smashing into a trash bin. The male officer stood in the street, gun smoking in his hand. One attacker still had Ethan by the hoodie, dragging him toward the open rear door of the SUV. Ethan's voice was raw, panicked. "Mommy! Help!" I charged without thinking. My shoulder hit the man's ribs with every ounce of strength I had. We crashed to the ground, rolling hard on the pavement. He swung a fist at my face, but I caught his wrist, shoving the broken bottle toward him, stopping just short of his throat. The hooded man was suddenly there, wrenching the attacker's arms behind his back. "Go! Get the kid out!" I pulled Ethan into my arms, clutching him so tightly I could feel his heartbeat pounding against mine. The female officer yelled, "We have to move now. More are coming." But before we could take a single step, a voice echoed from the far end of the street, deep, mocking. "Well done, Sarah. You passed the warm-up." A figure stepped into the glow of the broken headlights. Tall, clean suit, no mask, and in his hand my mother's necklace. The sight of that necklace in his hand made my stomach twist. I'd given it to my mother on my wedding day, a silver chain with a tiny sapphire. She never took it off. "What did you do to her?" My voice came out low, shaking with rage. The man smiled faintly. "She's alive. For now. But your little stunt tonight," he glanced at the wrecked SUV, the groaning men on the ground, "wasn't part of our plan." The hooded man stepped forward, his blade glinting under the broken streetlights. "Let her go, Vance. Or this ends right here." Vance's smirk deepened. "Oh, I'm counting on it ending. But not here. Not like this." He tossed the necklace at my feet. "She told me you'd recognize it. Told me you'd know it meant her time is almost up." Ethan gripped my arm, whispering, "Mommy, I want Grandma." My hands curled into fists. "Where is she?" Vance tilted his head toward the east. 2 miles from here. You have 15 minutes to get there. Or you'll be retrieving a body instead." The female officer stepped in, weapon raised. "You're not going anywhere." But Vance didn't flinch. He just whistled. From the shadows, more figures emerged, at least a dozen. All armed, all smiling like they already knew they'd won. The hooded man swore under his breath. "Sarah, take the boy and run. Now." I shook my head. "I'm not leaving without my mother." Vance chuckled. "Good. Then follow me. Bring your son. He's part of the deal now." The male officer whispered quickly into his radio, requesting immediate backup. Ashford perimeter 2 miles east. High priority, all units. Vance started walking backward, his eyes locked on mine. "Tick-tock, Sarah." I took a deep breath, looked at Ethan, then at the hooded man. He gave me one quick nod, the kind that said we'll make it through this. And then I stepped forward into the darkness after Vance, knowing that whatever happened next would decide everything. That's the end of Seek. The conclusion to Bride with Veil. Broken heart. My husband brings me no joy and causes me daily distress, often leaving both my child and me in tears. Before we close this story, just like and thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification bell so you don't miss more upcoming stories like this. And tell me in the comments, from which part of the country are you watching this?